Hello, and welcome to The Router, the official podcast of the UQ Computing Society, where we explore the human side of tech. I'm your host, Matt, and today I'm joined by Harry Guthrie, also known as @Guthers on Slack. He's a recent UQCS alumni, studied software engineering, and has a wealth of experiences to share, from traveling in Illinois to China to co-founding a software company, Autop, and everything in between. Tune in to hear about how saying yes to opportunities can lead you to exciting and unexpected places. All right. Hello, Harry, and welcome to The Router. How are you today?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm great. Before I start, I just wanted to get a quick intro from you about yourself, what you do, and what was uni like, I guess?
Yeah, so my name's Harry Guthrie. I graduated at the end of 2020, so I've been graduated for 5 months now, I suppose. I am a co-founder at Autop, so I run the tech side of the business. And university was just sort of a series of experiences. I just sort of said yes to lots of stuff, and that led me to lots of weird and interesting places. I'm not what one would consider studious, but I still managed to go and do lots of really cool extracurricular stuff without having remarkably okay grades. But yeah, so that's sort of, I suppose, the TLDR of me.
Very nice. I guess that's a good philosophy in life, right? Say yes to everything.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess let's talk about uni to begin with. A lot of our listeners are current university students or have just graduated university. Were there any experiences that kind of stand out during your time at university? I've heard that you've participated in a research project overseas. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I went over to the States as part of a research group. It was a joint research group between UQ, Monash, and the University of Illinois, more specifically the research group there. And yeah, so I was over there for a month pretty much on the dot. No, 2 months on the dot, actually. Yeah, God, it's a while ago. Yeah, and so we were simulating bee vision while we were over there. And that just sort of, yeah, I just sort of took a chance at uni, and that sort of panned out. And what would you like to know?
I guess I want to know kind of like, how did you find that? How did you get that? Like, how did you end up being able to go to America for 2 months?
Yeah,
what was the, yeah.
So, back to that sort of saying yes to most things, I sort of look at a lot of stuff like, I may as well try it and see how it goes. And so what happened was I was in COSC 3500, I believe it is, the high performance computing course.
Oh, yeah.
And during one of the sessions, at the end of the session, or maybe the start, Dr. David Abramson came in and just gave a talk about a seminar series that was being run between the UQ Research Computing Center and NCSA in the States, which is the National Center for Supercomputing Applications. And he was just like, hey, if you're interested, come along. And he mentioned that there was the possibility of potentially doing some international researchy sort of thing. It was very non-committal. It was like hey, that might be a thing that might happen. But I thought, look, David gave a bit of a brief on different like seminar topics, and I thought some of them were pretty interesting. And so I went along to this seminar series that I think was 7 or 8 seminars long. They provided us with food and drink, like little nibbles beforehand. So, poor uni student, of course I'm going to go.
Take all the food you can get, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I'm just getting a free feed. But, they know their audience. You get uni students there with the promise of free food, and then, you're like, I'm actually interested by these topics. A methodology I think UQCS implements well. But, and so the topics were really cool. They were talking about the dark energy survey and information coming in from these telescopes that is on a massive scale, and the sort of technical challenges behind transmitting, computing and storing the results and all that sort of stuff from live. You have a 12-hour window where you might need to readjust your your telescope very quickly to like pinpoint on a particular location in, you know, across, you know, thousands of gigabytes of data, but you need to be able to readjust within a few seconds, right? Like we're talking ridiculous scales. And that was just really cool because, you know, just some of the numbers they'd throw around are just sort of awe-inspiring amounts of computation. And I thought that was really cool. And, you know, the work that NCSA was doing at the time was really cool, and they had a lot of different projects. Another one was about like in Cyprus doing augmented reality to show renditions of like old buildings. And, you know, like, so you'd walk around Cyprus holding up your phone and looking through your screen to have a look at this sort of augmented reality scape around you that takes the buildings that you're standing next to, but either refurbishes them or will, you know, I think one of the ones is they put in the walls that were formerly around the city. And, you know, so like just stuff like that. That's like, it's just really cool. It's, you know, non-business applied problem solving. And it was just really cool because it's, you know, as programmers, a lot of the time you end up in enterprisey sort of stuff. And I mean, I have too, but it was something that, you know, I thought if I had the opportunity to explore it, because at the time I was considering, you know, was research where I wanted to go. Yeah. As everybody, I think, at some point thinks, even those of us without good grades, you know, we still consider it. But yeah, and so that was sort of the intro to that. Saying yes.
Really cool. Saying yes to your one seminar series, and you're suddenly on your way to United States.
Yeah.
Were there any other opportunities that you kind of, anything that comes to mind from your uni days?
Well, I mean, there's the trip you and I went on, Matt.
Yeah. This is what I was gonna segue into.
Yeah, you teed yourself up perfectly if you would like to segue in.
Well, yeah. So Dalian Trip. What do you reckon of that? Could you tell us, I guess, to those, or maybe I should intro that. So to those who aren't aware, every year, or at least up until 2019, UQ sent about 30 or so students over to China as part of a startup and entrepreneurship program for developers and people who, you know, wanted to try out IT or software engineering or something, and like in a bit of a like startup context. So yeah, just jetted off to China for a month. It's pretty fun. Anything stood out for you?
Yeah. Oh, look, it was just sort of completely different to everything I'd already done. I wasn't involved with a lot of like the entrepreneurial side of the undergraduate scene, and it was just really interesting because we were thrown very, very head first into like this experience, and I don't think any of us knew what was coming for us.
Yep.
You know, like I was probably one of the older people on that trip. I think I was maybe second eldest and probably one of the most. I was fortunate. I worked in industry before I. Dropped my phone. Worked in industry before I even started uni, only by a little bit. Like I wasn't, you know, this isn't my second wind or anything. I just got fortunate getting a job out of high school, and so I had a bit more experience. But like the trip wasn't around, oh, what can you build and how quick. It was, hey, we've got 2 weeks to build something, and then the next 2 weeks all like the business and the marketing of it and all that sort of stuff, which was just really cool. It was completely different. You know, and I think like they also did a lot of like lessons on like Chinese culture and like linguistics and you know like which was pretty cool. You know, I didn't really haven't had much opportunity to do stuff like that beforehand. So that was like a lot of fun. Yeah, like I mean, a lot of drinking. Just about every day we, you know, would go drink some from like at one of the bars nearby and smoke shisha. It was a great time.
Yeah, I mean, highly recommend it. I guess with these kinds of things, it's a bit hard to say we recommend going on trips because I think about every single person wants to leave Australia at the moment.
Pretty much.
But I guess you'd say something like, if you're given the opportunity.
Even even within Australia, I think like I only cottoned on to this really late in my university sort of tenure, which was longer than it should have been. Just go to things. Like, there is a lot of opportunity. UQ invests a lot of time and money into, you know, trying to promote students to get out and get involved in stuff. And like, you know, I've talked to Nimrod Clayman from the UQ Ventures, and he's a really cool dude to talk to. Really lovely. And, you know, he's talking about like what UQ Ventures is just trying to do, you know, like by itself, you know, if you're more businessy inclined. And I didn't know that, well, I'd heard of it, but I didn't really care while I was at uni. And I think that's probably one of the bigger mistakes I made at uni, was not actually getting more involved with like opportunities. Like, so not necessarily society, sorry, Matt. But like
fair enough.
Things offered by the university through its like research groups and all that sort of stuff, just because there are opportunities there if you go look for them. And just when you see something present itself, just going, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, sounds good. Just go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I was also UQCS Committee, I think 2017 now, which is terrifyingly long ago. It was around there. I can't remember the exact year. Maybe it was 2018.
Might have been 2018, because I remember seeing you in 2018.
Yeah, I think it might have been 2018. Yeah, and look, that was a experience. My tenure as committee member was interesting. We had a transition of power midway through our run, because Taylor Manderson had decided she no longer wanted to be president, which was fair enough, because she'd been it for quite a while. So yeah, it was an interesting transition. Cameron took over from her, and you know, he worked his ass off for it, but it was very interesting because, you know, you're sort of starting with a foot down and all that sort of stuff. Although I think I might be misremembering. I think Cameron might have always been president, but Taylor was a committee member aimed with helping Cameron, and then she dropped out of the committee general. I might be misremembering that slightly, but yeah, it was an interesting time, but you learn a lot really quick.
Yeah,
you know,
societies are like kind of a bit of a roller coaster.
They're an organism.
Yeah, they're a little thing.
It's sort of like the university group from hell, because you know, you're all university students. You're gonna have times where you're busy as fuck, but like UQCS is one of the biggest societies, if not the biggest. Like, I mean, you know, if you discount EUS, I think maybe like we're probably one of the biggest. Like, definitely have the most active members going to shit constantly. You know, and we have the largest like social media presence, like with Slack. You know, maybe not social media, but you know, a way that it's something that constantly needs to be moderated to some degree, 24/7. I think at the time we would have, you know, somebody messaging the committee twice a week for different stuff. And you know,
just random like things like that.
And you know, the code of conduct, I think, came out in our year. Like, that wasn't a thing. Or if it, you know, like, we created a lot of stuff that was very imperfect and has definitely been improved upon since. But like, it's
just a lot of varied work, right?
Yeah. There's always something different and new to be done, and like, you know, it's a great opportunity to kind of learn about a lot of different shit, and you know, particularly being required to do lots of different stuff. You know, you'll have people who aren't public speakers who would be getting up and having to talk to crowds of 200 people because they're like, hey, we need to run some logistics for hackathon tonight, and I know what they are, so I'm going to be the one to say them, even though I don't particularly want to speak to a crowd like this big. Which is awesome, you know, like you get pushed out of your comfort zone and you learn that you're okay, you know, being uncomfortable.
Yeah, there's definitely been times I've had to step out of my comfort zone as well, as a committee member and
would you like?
And I think it's a really good experience to just like, you know, force yourself to it.
Yeah, would you like to share any particular instances with our listeners?
Oh, well, I mean, you mentioned something about having to get up in front of many, many people to make an announcement when you are not comfortable with public speaking. That is a very common occurrence for me. But you know what? That's what it's all about. And I guess, yeah, even for me, those experiences have dramatically changed the way I, you know, deal with public speaking and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you said yes. I mean, like, this is sort of like the, hey, everybody go watch the Yes Man movie now. But, like, it's an interesting way of looking at things. Like, I'll try most things once. Obviously, there's things I won't do because they're unsafe or I think are ethically wrong, obviously. There's always, it's not like a blanket rule, but, if you can't think of a good objection other than, oh, that makes me feel a bit uncomfortable from a, like, out of my comfort zone perspective, that's not a good enough reason. Obviously, there's a lot of caveats to that around safety and all that sort of stuff that I'm just going to brush past. But
as long as you can mentally manage it, and if it's something that you feel comfortable, or maybe it might make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, but, something that can fit into your life.
It's acknowledging that there's things that are going to make you uncomfortable that can help you grow as a person. And I think there's a lot of value in doing that. And I mean, that's sort of how I've ended up in my current position. It's a series of saying yeses, and now I co-run a company.
Yeah. Autop, tell us about that. So you've gone from, uni and I hope I'm pronouncing Autop correctly.
You are correct, yeah.
Wonderful, okay.
So many people say Auto P at every time.
Auto P, yeah. What
happened was, and this is another UQCS story, February last year, a person with the Slack handle Brad VK put a message up on projects on one of the channels going, hey, I'm looking for tutoring. More or less, that's it. And I messaged them and I went, hey, I'm interested. And, I met this guy at uni, Brad, and, we had a tutoring session, and he later told me that was my unofficial interview.
What?
Yeah. So, like the classic story of, hey, do you want to be my co-founder?
Yeah.
Listen up, business kids. This is how you do it. So Brad is very, very, very smart. He had no technical background and had made like this sort of Zapier no-code solution that was almost a proof of concept, and that was sort of what I was helping fit a bit. And he went, okay, I'm going to need to learn how to write Python to add to that. Brad now knows how to write code in both Python and Flutter, and connect like a Flask API up to a like Flutter front end to like load API requests onto a mobile or a website. Like, Brad has learned a remarkable amount very quick. So business students, learn shit and, con us into going to tutoring sessions where we, agree to help out. And I did a lot of consultancy all throughout uni and like doing a lot of different sorts of projects like that. So it went from, hey, I'll tutor you to, hey, I'll do some consultancy work for you, where I'll help build this product and project. And eventually he went, hey, what if I gave you equity and you charged less? And I went, yeah, okay, cool. Because I thought the project was really cool. And what it is around is we want people to be able to tell the full story of their business. So you have sales, and everybody knows how to track their sales, and that tells you how much money is coming in. But when you're trying to train teams and you're trying to like produce good teams that focus on the right things, in a lot of businesses you have KPIs. So key performance indicators.
Yep.
Yeah, I shouldn't forget that. That's one of the main concepts of my business. But I mean, I always call it KPI.
No one remembers the abbreviations anyway. It's just, KPI.
And so, the KPIs tell a much more full story of how a business runs. And so what we sort of did was, how do we create like a sort of reporting platform that provides feedback and does all this sort of stuff? And, that's just kept evolving and evolving and evolving. And like, I mean, we've got some really cool stuff coming out soon with like leaderboards and stuff inside teams so that, you get like gamification going and all that sort of stuff. And, it's just been this constantly interesting roller coaster of how can we provide more value and, integrate with other providers. So like, we loaded sales dynamically and, It's this massively interesting roller coaster of, do we have money this week? Maybe.
That's what starting a business is all about, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Going as you go.
If you're a startup and you have way too much money within the first few months, you've done it wrong somehow. But yeah, like it's been a very interesting roller coaster. But it just started by, I was like, oh yeah, cool, I'll tutor this kid. That seems like something I can do. I've got a bit of spare time. And that turned into, just thinking about things from another perspective, right? I could have just tutored him and said, okay, good luck, have fun. I went, oh, but what are you actually doing? Oh, okay, why do you need to learn this? Okay, you need it for this application. Because, I mean, I always found that I learned best when I had a particular thing to learn from, right? And I went, okay, why are you trying to learn code? Is there, like, let's start to build the components of this, tool and, have it do what you need it to do. And so, now I have, like...
Now you're a co-founder.
Now I'm a co-founder who has, like, some interesting amounts of architecture that work in weird and wonderful ways, and fail often and wonderfully. Nothing crashes the system. That's the only important thing, An API request can fail without shit hitting the fan.
Silent or light failure.
Well, I found AWS serverless makes life remarkably easy.
AWS serverless, like
So it effectively spins up a Lambda instance to take care of the API request as it's received.
Oh, I see.
And it's really cool. And like, I mean, I'm not a DevOps engineer, but I don't have any formal training, and I've just sort of had to learn stuff because, you ever want to host a website yourself, you're like, okay, what do I actually need to do here? Oh, cool, I can spin up an EC2 instance that serves it. Okay, cool, how do I plug my EC2 instance to the outside world? And, you run into all these weird sort of problems as you do it, and, so I've sort of cobbled stuff together. I'm not necessarily saying that's the best solution, but, doing a Flask API with serverless turned out to be really, really good. Like we can handle thousands of requests a day, and it's fine. Most requests are resolved in 0.1 of a second. Including making a database call and all that sort of shit. So it's pretty cool. It's surprising. It works surprisingly well.
I guess if you're anyone who's here who wants to start a startup, you heard him here first. AWS serverless.
Now somebody's going to do that, and they're going to go, "Why isn't this working?" And I'm going to go, "I don't know. It's not my problem."
And now you know who to go to for tech support. No,
I'd be happy to answer people's questions if they messaged me on Slack. My handle's Guthers.
That's perfect.
If people are interested in like again, it's all my opinion. Take it at your own risk. But more than happy to go. What architecture would I suggest? One of the most interesting things is tech languages that you're writing it in, and this is going to upset a lot of people because this disagrees with everybody. It's irrelevant what you pick. It
within
really
reason.
Is.
Within
reason, obviously, unless you have a very specific application and there's some very clear advantages, but most of the time it's just language fanatics, and
holy wars.
But if you like a language, that's a fairly valid reason to pick it. Unless there's an architectural problem there, and we pick Python because it's the easiest thing for a non-coder to pick up, right?
For sure.
And now Brad's learnt Flutter out of that, which is obviously C-based, and in my opinion, Flutter's really good. It is. I've used Cordova and stuff to do app stuff before, and that was horrible.
It's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, and Flutter Web isn't really meant to be used in production, but we do. I sort of just stay silent when people are talking about it and going, "Oh, you shouldn't use that in production." I'm like, "Yeah, look, you're probably not wrong. There's a lot of issues with it still, but it means we have two languages in our stack." Outside of SQL and all that sort of shit. Simple. Yeah, and that's incredibly valuable, and you can share code between your app and your website, and that's also very important.
Well, the whole mono code based thing with React Native and those kinds of approaches. It's kind of the other way, right? Going from native to web, which is kind of cool. And I've heard a lot of hype around Flutter, and there's plenty of people in the Slack as well who just even plenty of fanatics.
But honestly, I think Flutter, there's some getting your head around stateless and not stateless widgets is probably one of the first learning curves. Once you get around that, you can build so much shit really easily. I to be fair, I have a couple of classes that I use all the time that's around don't load this page until this API request has been made and resolved correctly. Don't do it, and having those sort of loading utils those, you make your abstract class that does it, and you're good. That's probably like the only bit that you actually have to engineer yourself, like to really make stuff work. But if it's like a fairly static website or app, you can build shit pretty fucking quick. And yeah, I'm sorry for anybody under 18 for making you no longer able to listen to this podcast. I mean, just giving shit a go. It's easier said than done, and you end up in some weird places. Doing contracting where you have like clients like, I need this thing by the end of the week, and you're like, yeah, but I have an assignment then, so I'm not gonna have it done by the end of the week. You end up in some weird positions, but it's experience, and everybody who graduates uni has differing levels of experience and grades. My grades were never good. I was better at building projects and doing stuff. And that's how I've always sold myself. And that's you can choose to be very academically inclined, and that's a choice you make, and that means you'll get good results. But if you're not as academically focused, there's other avenues. I'm saying this as somebody who did not get good grades, and I did not get like an honors class 1 or 2. I got a 3A. Like, I'll tell people that I don't care, because that doesn't matter to me. I have 5 years of industry experience, and even if you don't have 5 years, it's like, start as soon as you can, build projects, find people need shit done. I've done projects for research groups at UQ outside of that other thing I talked about, like just, hey, you need a solution developed. Cool. Let's just do it. And it's just saying yes within reason, obviously, but, exploring possibilities wherever possible. I definitely say it's well worth it.
Maybe I should call this episode "Say Yes." Say yes with Harry Guthrie.
Say yes, comma, don't blink. For any of my Whovian fans.
Well, I guess, is there any final things you wanted to say besides to try everything out? Any advice for those who want to start their own? Well, I guess this is a bit of a different situation because you kind of you joined as the number 2, right? But
Look, it's 100%. If you want to do more things and build more projects, there's nothing stopping you. Software is wonderfully amazing. You have people in first and second going, I don't know where to start. It's like, fantastic. That means you've built nothing, which means everything's left to build. You're not overbuilding crud for websites yet. You haven't had to do that yet. You haven't learned why that's such a terrible thing. Like, PDF generation is a whole host of misery that you haven't learnt about yet. Mapping is terribly complicated and time consuming. You haven't learnt why things are bad and why people charge lots for them yet, because I haven't found a PDF solution that doesn't really suck. And you'll have LaTeX, and that might be a way to do it if you but like, are you going to be able to deploy LaTeX onto like a Windows machine that your client's running because you've decided to go for a desktop application, right? Because you don't want to have to host stuff. You end up in weird positions all the time because of how you've chosen to go about stuff, And, like, I would suggest that, hey, the everybody's first website's a resume website, right? You put up a website, pick a stack, you can probably even do it for free. I mean, obviously you can do it through GitHub Pages for free. You can also use Google's...
Netlify? Or...
No, Google's Firebase?
Oh, yeah, Firebase, yeah.
Yeah, that deploys Flutter code ridiculously easily. That's how I host my websites for work for free. Like, that works perfectly fine. Obviously, if you're connecting it to more things and you need backend and all that stuff, you have different problems to worry about. But, there's nothing stopping you from spinning up a Firebase instance with like a Flutter page that has just a counter that you click on. Cool. You've learned how to deploy that. You now have that page up there. You know how to create a new Flutter project. Hey, that's up there now. That's it. It's cool. And it's like, okay, what do I do with it now? It's like, okay, I need a thing that I, note-taking apps are fairly constant, but that means you have to worry about state management, which is a second problem, Okay,
that's good to learn, right?
Yeah,
Good to learn.
Do you want persistent state versus current state or whatever, And those are things that you don't know about until you get there and you go, oh, why does this matter? How come when I refresh my page, I've redeployed and it says it's deployed and I hit F5 on Chrome, why hasn't my page changed? Because Chrome is remembering your shit and that sucks. You know, you need to keep your page on Chrome. You don't know about that problem until you've run into it, you know? But if a client messages you going, oh, this hasn't updated, and you're like, it definitely has, you need to understand why they're saying that, you know? And you don't know about these problems till you're there. And that's the really cool things, and that's what separates people who have experience and people who don't. You just don't know about these problems that actually affect real life applications until you're there. And the only way you do it is find that out is by doing it. Like, there's no course on, hey, PDF generation's gonna suck. Hey, you know, like, nobody tells you that really.
PDF 1001. Into it. Yeah. I mean, yeah, so give everything a go, I guess.
Yeah, and, you know, if you're, especially first years, you know, you go, oh, I don't know enough yet. Fantastic. Google it. Google it. You'll find out. And if it doesn't work the first 100 times, like your website looks like garbage, it doesn't matter. You got a website out there. You know, I spent a week figuring out how to actually deploy from Firebase. Cool. Now you know how deployments work. You've learned something. That is a marketable skill. It's something you could say to a recruiter or a job interview. I taught myself how to deploy sites. That's much, and look, this might ruffle some feathers, but that's much more interesting than, I got straight 7s last semester.
Maybe,
I found most employees in my experience, and maybe this is based on how I try to sell myself in an interview, care more about your experience as opposed to your grades. And yes, grades do matter occasionally. You have employees who'll cut you out. I've been cut out from jobs because of it, you know, but maybe those aren't the jobs you want. You know, because typically people who are only looking at grades aren't the people who are going to be your direct manager most of the time. They're not the software people. They're the business people who think that's what's most important. You know, or that's the metric by which they can most easily yardstick you on. But yeah, I think I've pontificated for long enough.
No, that's all right. Thanks so much for sharing experiences. You know, it sounds like a pretty interesting journey. And yeah, if people want to, you know, have a chat to you, where should they contact you? Slack?
Yeah, just message me on Slack. That'd be the easiest.
All right.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're a company that needs business analytics solutions, I'll have my shameless shill ready.
Yeah, I'll chuck the link in the description as well. There you
Excellent.
go. All right, thanks so much.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, that's all for today. Thanks so much for listening. As usual, our next episode will be out in a fortnight around midday on Sundays. Until then, come join us on our Slack community at slack.uqcs.org. My name is Matthew Lowe, and this podcast was created by the UQ Computing Society with gracious support from our industry sponsors.